Hey, all you dare to be different engine builders, do you want to find out how we went from this to this? Stick around and find out. We'll take you through it. The first step before you take any of the bottom end apart is clean up everything really well. The top of the pistons, the top of the cylinders where the heads mate, and just make sure it's very clean. Use your dial indicator, measure how far down each piston is in the hole at top dead center. This is very important because to be able to raise the compression ratio, you're going to need to know how much clearance you have to deal with. Here's a look at the bottom end. You can see the connecting rods there have a very large amount of material on them for balancing out the bottom end. I'm not sure why International built their motors this way. Most others have a little bit of metal there, but these things were massive. Probably just speaks to the durability that they were shooting for, as they put these things in all kinds of different applications, from light duty scouts all the way up to dump trucks. The other thing to notice is all of these motors came with a gear drive from the factory, which spins the cam backwards for most other engines. After cleaning up everything really well, it was down to the machine shop to get bored 60 over, as this block was already bored 30 over from a previous rebuild. Next, it was time to get the block ready for paint by loose fitting all of the covers onto the engine. All of the other holes that didn't have a cover got a little piece of paper just to keep the excess paint out of the cavities. And then it was time to shoot a nice thick coat of International Harvester Red, which turned out really nice. This is the paint I used. It's not engine paint, but it's held up really well from that initial application. I watched some videos on using electrolysis to clean rusty parts to get the rust off, and I wanted to give that a try. And so this is a little video to show how that worked out. Gunky, that one's too bad. This one's worse. Yeah, I could run a wire brush in there, but I want to give this a try. Hopefully, in the morning I still have some parts. Hook it up right. Anyhow, that's the parts we're going to try first. They're the coolant outlet with the thermostat housing. Here's our super washing soda Arm & Hammer. This was recommended online, so we're gonna see that if that works. And then here's my setup. About 2 gallons of water in this 5-gallon bucket. There's my sacrificial anode there that I'm gonna use, just a little piece of steel. And I'll put the parts to be cleaned down in there with a wire attached to them to make the connection. So I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of this Arm & Hammer into this solution, make my electrolyte, and then I'll hook up the battery charger. Okay, so I just got this hooked up. This is my old charger set to regular and 2 amps. This is a trickle charge. And up here, that's to one side, I've got the positive. That's attached to my sacrificial anode. The negative is attached via a copper wire down to the parts to be cleaned. And we'll see if this works. We're starting to see bubbles. I don't know if the camera's picking that up on the anode. It's already starting to bubble there, so it's doing something. I don't know what, but it's doing something. So we'll see if it cleans these parts up on the inside. Hopefully I've got it hooked up right. Say if you hook up the red to your parts, you won't have parts in the morning. And also keep your alligator clips out of the solution. Otherwise your alligator clips will become the sacrificial anode. Anyway, give it a try, see if it works, come back in the morning. Look at the rust just pulling away off of the part. It's pretty effective. Okay, we're gonna see how this, first things first, unplug the charger. Let's see how the parts do. There's a lot of rust in the bucket. That looks pretty good. Let's unhook this lead. Still some scaling in there, but it's definitely come off, and probably just take a small brush and brush that off later and see how it comes off. If it doesn't come off, we'll put it back in for longer. How's the underside look? Pretty good job. I rebuilt this motor during COVID and had a difficult time sourcing pistons at the 60 over bore size. International motors are really kind of getting to be a rarity anyway, and so just sourcing pistons in general was hard. There's not a lot of aftermarket support for them. But I was able to contact Ross Racing Pistons, and they said they could make up a set of forged pistons for me. They're not cheap. Yeah, it worked out pretty well because I ended up not having to machine the block down, the deck surface of the block, to raise the compression. What I did is I took the measurements that I had from measuring the old pistons down in the bore at the top dead center, and had that added to the top of the piston when measured from the center of the wrist pin, if that makes sense. And so basically the pistons were just a little bit taller, and that gave me a little bump in compression up to about 9.3 to 1 when I calculated it. If you remember the different cams I evaluated in Desktop Dyno 5 on the previous video, you probably wouldn't have picked the orange line here. But look here where the torque comes in. The orange line is all early torque, which is where we wanted it. This is the difference in the cams shown in this picture. Next, it was time to degree the cam, and I just put it straight up at 0 degrees. It came in perfect with that gear drive. The new 40 thousandths taller pistons brought the pistons way up in the hole at top dead center, maximizing compression and squish. Next, it was time to rebuild and port the oil pump for maximum flow. I like to clean and paint all of the fasteners before installing them. I think it gives it a much more finished and mechanical look to the engine. Just really makes it pop. For the valve covers, I spent a lot of time sanding and then putting a little bit of filler in some of the forming marks along the valve covers just to make them have that extra polished look. My daughter helped me hand paint the international text on the valve covers on one of them, and I did the other. Hers looked super professional. Mine looked like an amateur did it. Next, it was time to install the roller rockers that I'd sourced. They weren't a true roller, they just have a roller tip, but the ratio was a little higher, giving me a little bit more lift, a little bit more lower end torque. Okay, so I bought these intake manifold gaskets which block off the crossover port that heats up the carburetor, because I'm going to go with fuel injection, and I want to keep all the heat out of the intake manifold that I can. So we'll see how those work when we put them on, and hopefully it works okay. The intake gaskets are for a natural gas powered or propane powered engine, and so they don't require the crossover. And so the crossover was really for carbureted vehicles, and since this is going to be fuel injected, I'm going to use these to see if it makes it a little better performing by keeping the intake charge a little bit cooler. Next, I masked off and painted the intake manifold and the lifter valley tray that goes under the intake manifold and installed them on the engine. A few more parts installed, and it was getting ready to fire up for the first time. Got these Flowmasters. They came in, they're Series 50, and just give it a really nice sound. Installed the Holley Sniper system as long as a couple of gauges and a radiator to be able to cool it, and started on the stand. And it was almost time to get it going. Okay, so we're gonna fire it up. What do you think, John?
Go.
Is it gonna go? All right, we'll give it a try.
Yeah.
This? Yeah, it's just open. This one's open too.
Oh, okay.
Eventually I'll plumb those in, but it's just venting the crankcase
Okay.
gases. Okay, let's key on. Hear the click of the fuel injection. It's like everything's ready to go. it up to 2000 RPM to break in the cam, and you can hear some ticking. That was those new rocker arms. A little bit of a clearance issue with the baffle underneath the one valve cover there on the driver's side, and so I ended up having to take the valve cover off and do some clearancing to allow that to not have that clicking noise. I hope you enjoyed this video and it inspires you to go out and make something old new again. Until next time, carry on.